welcome viewers. I'm Pia and you're watching the Africa Brief on NewsX World, and here are the top headlines. Paramilitary forces push into East Sudan in a new escalation of the civil war. This comes after the RSF consolidated its grip over Darfur last month, intensifying the fight in the region despite United States' push for a ceasefire. The Sudanese army reports that paramilitary rapid support forces launched drone strikes targeting the northern town of Meroe last night. Although the strikes were intercepted, the town plunged into darkness. The UN reports that 90,000 civilians have fled al-Fasher in Darfur and atrocities including sexual assaults have been widespread. Meanwhile, international calls for action to cut off weapon supplies to the RSF continue to grow. The International Organization of Migration Chief Amy Pope has stated that the funding gap for aid agencies is accentuating the crisis in Sudan, leaving the agency unable to help many of the tens of thousands of people who are fleeing from the Darfur region. South African authorities have granted entry to 153 Palestinian refugees who arrived on Thursday on a chartered flight from Kenya to seek asylum in the country, but had been earlier denied admission after failing immigration tests. Mali is facing a dramatic escalation in insecurity as jihadist groups have carried out a record number of kidnappings targeting foreigners this year. This according to data from ACLED. At least 22 to 26 foreign nationals were abducted between May and October 2025, which is the highest figure ever recorded in the country. Ivory Coast has announced reinforcement of border security following a surge in Malian refugees fleeing jihadist violence. Authorities say the influx is linked to recent attacks by militants from the JNIM, which is aligned with the Al-Qaeda. Tanzania has appointed longtime loyalist Mwigulu Nchemba as the Prime Minister. The move follows a disputed October election that triggered deadly protests. Parliament approved Nchemba in a near unanimous vote, and President Hassan has defended the election's fairness. Well, viewers, those are the headlines and our key focus. Sudan and what's taking place over there. The ongoing civil war in Sudan has intensified as the paramilitary rapid support forces shift their focus eastward after strengthening control over Darfur. The RSF has launched drone strikes and moved into the Kordofan region, an area between Darfur and Sudan's eastern states. Reports of violence continue with new arms shipments and troop mobilizations, heightening fears of further conflict. Survivors from the town of Bara in North Kordofan has described the brutal revenge attacks by RSF fighters, including summary executions of those accused of supporting the Sudanese army. The RSF has rejected a ceasefire proposed by the United States, which is now further deepening the crisis. Humanitarian aid remains blocked as both sides prepare for more violence, with famine and mass displacement worsening the dire humanitarian crisis. With us on the broadcast is Ambassador Mahesh Sachdev, former Indian diplomat, joining us from New Delhi. Thank you so much for taking our time and speaking to us on NewsX World. We've been discussing Sudan day after day, but fresh reports are coming in from the United Nations that the number of refugees who are fleeing al-Fasher is continuing to increase. The last number we tracked was 35,000. Now, a week later, it stands at a staggering 90,000. In the midst of all of this, there seems to be that the violence will not abate anytime soon. In your assessment, with the RSF now pushing further east, is there a threat to Kordofan, a real threat, and how can the Sudanese army then counter this?
Thank you for having me. It's becoming sadly a routine to talk about Sudan, and you're right in giving it top priority on Africa. The crisis in Sudan deserves that kind of treatment. I should say that after Darfur falling to RSF late last month, the events have unfolded in a dramatic way there as well as elsewhere in Sudan. In Darfur, reported mass killings by the RSF cadres have led to refugees fleeing. First, they were held back by RSF cadres who had dug a moat around the town to prevent people from going, but now that seemed to have been lifted, and people are relatively freer to go. So the numbers have been rising, uh, as you have mentioned, and they may rise even further because according to some accounts, nearly 1 million people, residents and refugees from other parts of northern Darfur, were resident there uh, when the town fell. So the numbers that you quote, 90,000, is not doesn't speak the full story. Others may be trying to go because the hopelessness of situation there. Second issue that has boiled out of the whole al-Bashir uh, victory of RSF is that the momentum now is being utilized by RSF in other parts of the area of the area it controls or wishes to control. That includes uh, Kordofan region, where it has an alliance with the local leaders against the SAF. Kordofan is not only a bridge between Darfur and Khartoum,
Yes.
but it's also rich in gold and perhaps oil, bordering on South Sudan. It's also easy to be supplied through South Sudan with arms and other requirements to Bharat. So there, the holdout town of Para, which was occupied by SAF only 2 months ago, much to the celebration of locals, is again under siege after the momentum of al-Bashir. Maybe the troops from RSF have been redeployed to Bara, and situation there is likely to repeat the same old story of al-Bashir, where after 500 days, the SAF eventually had to withdraw under siege. So if Bara also gets the same end, the road to Khartoum from Darfur gets cleared. That was the one major obstacle in RSF's reconquest of the central Sudan, including Khartoum. So despite agreements by RSF about ceasefire by Quad countries and its non-response by SAF, the fighting is likely to continue and may even get more vicious.
Indeed, indeed. So requesting you to stay on with us. I've of course spoken of the data, and on that note, we're getting fresh reports that the Sudanese army has reported that the rapid support forces in fact launched drone strikes targeting the northern town of Merowe, which has the Merowe Dam. The army stated that it intercepted the attacks, but the strikes did cause a power cut, plunging the town into darkness. Merowe has been under the Sudanese army control for months, and the RSF has increasingly used drones in recent months in order to target this particular city. This violence, of course, comes amidst the war escalating and protracting in the Kordofan region as well. Thousands have been killed and nearly 12 million people have been displaced. As I said earlier, UN reports indicate that 90,000 civilians have fled El Fasher in Darfur, as atrocities including sexual assaults have been widespread as well. Meanwhile, there have been calls by international bodies for action to cut off weapons supplies to the RSF, which continue to grow. Still with us is Ambassador Mahesh Sachdev. What's interesting is that we're seeing whatever is playing out on the ground not happen in isolation. There's of course a tacit backing given to the RSF by the United Arab Emirates. On one hand, you're seeing the Egyptians, the Qataris, the Turkish, on the other hand backing the Sudanese army. So the Middle East, Gulf states, they have their own considerations, but when it comes to the armament that is being given to the Sudanese army, I beg your pardon, the RSF in particular by the UAE. What sort of interest does the UAE have in all of this? A lot of people have been discussing the vast swathes of agricultural land, the fact that a lot of UAE-based agro-processing companies are, they have their interests in Sudan in particular as well. The oil, the natural gas that is present over there, the rich gold reserves as well.
You're right, nailed it, but let me be slightly more specific. UAE is a desert country and it prizes the autonomy on food stuff. It is therefore trying to acquire tracts of land abroad to grow those crops, and the proceeds then come to UAE's companies. This is already happening in Ethiopia and Kenya, I think. And now Sudan, being a breadbasket of the Arab world in earlier times, is now being subject to the same treatment. Secondly, UAE has an abiding and growing interest in controlling the strategic area in the Gulf region where the Houthis, etc., operate. It has taken control of Socotra Island from Yemen. It has also acquired base in Djibouti, and it's eyeing the coastline along the Red Sea of Sudan, where it would like to have its own arrangements for civilian as well as maritime and military bases. Teaching world of Dubai is very active in that area. Somalia also is a candidate for UAE's territorial acquisition along the coast. So that is another part. Of course, one should say that SAF that controls the Red Sea coastline at the moment is unwilling to do anything about it because they don't like UAE supporting RSF. Thirdly, in RSF-controlled areas of Darfur, there's plenty of gold mining.
Yes.
And all that gold is reportedly transmitted or transferred to Dubai, where they are refineries, and it is monetized in a legal manner. Then again, oil you have mentioned, Kordofan and South Sudan are rich in oil, but then evacuating them depends on a pipeline to Port Sudan, which is not under RSF control. So they are then using RSF, supporting RSF to ensure that their interests in these areas are met. On geological basis, RSF has persuaded UAE authorities that Sudanese government under SAF is in tacit alliance with the Islamists of Sudan. Islam has a very strong presence in Sudan as a political force, with Mahdi rule being there during pre-British times, etc. And they've been part of the political landscape, and SAF has co-opted them, and that is something that UAE does not like, because UAE is dead set against political Islam anywhere in the Muslim world. So that too sets UAE at a collision course with SAF. Thank you.
Indeed. Of course, Ambassador Sachdev has highlighted some very crucial points to also look at the countries that are bordering Sudan. one of them being Chad. Interestingly, there was a meeting held between UAE President Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan as well as the President of the Republic of Chad, Mohamed Idris Deby Itno. Chad is, of course, located to the west of Sudan. It borders, in fact, the Darfur province, and that's, of course, a route that many analysts say is through where the weaponry is, in fact, transferred to the RSF militias. With that, I'd like to thank you, Ambassador Sajdev, for taking out time and explaining that in a very comprehensive manner for all of our viewers. On that note, we're shifting focus to news coming in from South Africa. We're learning that South African authorities have admitted 130 Palestinians who were initially denied entry at OR Tambo International Airport. The group of 153 travelers arrived from Kenya on a chartered flight but failed standard immigration checks, including not declaring their stay details and lacking required departure stamps. Border officials stated that none of the travelers indicated plans to seek asylum, leading to the initial refusal. They were later cleared after the Ministry of Home Affairs received assurances from humanitarian group Gift of the Givers, which agreed to accommodate them during their stay. By that time, 23 travelers had already continued to other destinations. The Border Management Authority clarified that Palestinians qualify for 90-day visa-free entry, provided they meet the entry conditions. South Africa has been a very vocal supporter of the Palestinian cause and has a pending case against Israel at the International Court of Justice. More news coming in, this time from Ivory Coast. Ivory Coast has announced a reinforcement of border security following a surge in Malian refugees fleeing jihadist violence. Authorities say that the influx is linked to recent attacks by militants from the JNIM, which is aligned with the Al-Qaeda. Since September, the group has targeted fuel trucks and threatened foreign businesses working with the Malian government. Hundreds of people fled the town of Luluni near the Ivory Coast border after a recent attack. The Ivorian National Security Council has ordered increased security measures along the northern border. Ivory Coast also hosts about 90,000 refugees from neighboring Burkina Faso who have fled similar violence. As the JNIM's control expands, both the United States and the United Kingdom have withdrawn non-essential personnel from Mali, and embassies have advised their citizens to leave the country. In more news, this time from Tanzania, we're learning that President Suluhu has appointed longtime loyalist Mwigulu Nchemba as the country's new prime minister. The move comes after a disputed election on the 29th of October, which triggered protests and crashes that rights groups say killed hundreds of people. Parliament approved Nchemba in a near unanimous vote. He previously served as finance minister and held posts in the cabinets of both President Samia Suluhu Hassan and her predecessor John Magufuli. Hassan has defended the fairness of the election and rejected criticism of a human rights record. Tanzania projects 6% economic growth this year, boosted by infrastructure projects, even as aid from international partners has fallen. With that, viewers, it's a wrap on the Africa Brief. We will continue to track all of these updates very, very closely. In the meantime, we're dipping into a quick short break.